Eastham Unit, East Texas, one of the state's most feared maximum security prisons, where razor wire meets unforgiving walls and every shadow holds a secret. From the outside, it's a place built on order and routine, guards on patrol, inmates counted 3 times a day, and rules that cannot be broken. But inside these walls, a different game is being played. At the center of it all is Warden Keisha Delacroix, 42 years old, renowned for turning chaotic blocks into model wings. She strides through the yard with the confidence of someone who holds every life here in her hands. Officially, she's respected. Unofficially, whispers follow her wherever she goes. Here, in near-complete darkness, 2 men believe they've found something impossible. A secret connection with the warden herself. Javon Baptiste, known as J Money, pushes his shirt collar aside, recalling the late-night meetings that brought him special favors, extra recreation time, better meals, gifts from a woman who promised loyalty. Across the hall, Darius Montgomery, D-block to his friends, smiles at the memory of her voice whispering in his ear, her eyes soft with promises. He thinks he's the only one, but they're both wrong. Each man believes he holds a private piece of the warden's world. Each man trusts her with his darkest secret, and each man is about to discover just how carefully those secrets are kept, and how deep the plan really runs. As the prison counts, Gilman walks footsteps, and the clang of doors closing echoes down the corridors. One question hangs in the air. How far will she go to protect her reputation? And how badly will 2 men pay for her hidden designs? As dawn breaks over Eastham Unit, Warden Delacroix slips into a private clinic down the hall. No staff waiting, no questions asked. Today's appointment will change everything. A single sheet of paper slides across the desk, positive. In that moment, her measured calm fractures. This diagnosis marks her new path. Years earlier, before these walls, Keisha Delacroix stood beside a man she trusted, a partner she believed in. But one night, a single mistake turned love into betrayal, and betrayal into a virus she could never forget. In the months that followed, anger took root, and a vow formed in her mind. No one would ever hurt her again without paying the price. Meanwhile, in the block below, Javon Baptiste wakes with a fever he brushes off as the prison flu. Darius Montgomery pauses in the yard, rubbing a tingle in his fingers that he chalks up to cold steel and long hours at the lathe. Both men press on, unaware that these aches are more than chance. They are signs of a plan already in motion. Back in her office, Keisha watches. Every sick call slip, every lower defense report, flows through her hands like a personal dossier. She notes Javon's rising temperature, Darius's sudden weight loss, details too precise to be coincidence. In her mind, this is control, proof that her reach extends even into their bodies. But questions begin to surface among the guards. Why does the warden check medical charts at midnight? How did these 2 inmates land in the clinic so often, just as Keisha walked by? Rumors drift through the corridors, and a nervous undercurrent runs beneath the daily routine. Yet neither Javon nor Darius connects their weakening strength to the woman they worship. They believe the warden's favors were genuine. They believe she would never harm them. And as their health slips, their trust remains unbroken, setting the stage for truths neither man is prepared to face. In the hush before curfew, a single file flashes on Keisha's screen. Patient D-block. She clicks open. And in that silent moment, a grain of doubt stirs in the guard watching from the doorway, just before the warden disappears back into her private world, carrying secrets more dangerous than any inmate on her block. It started with a late shift and a restless night. Javon couldn't sleep. He stepped out under the excuse of a cleaning detail, needing a breath and a moment alone. What he didn't expect was to see Darius, calm, collected Darius, emerging quietly from the administrative wing. His shirt was untucked, his steps rushed. Their eyes met for a second. Neither spoke. Darius disappeared down the corridor. Javon stood frozen. It wasn't just the hour. It was the familiarity in Darius's face. Something he'd seen before, not in passing, but in his own reflection, after visits to that same office. Back in his cell, the silence was louder. He couldn't shake it. That walk, that look. The questions piled too fast for answers. When Tremaine returned from yard duty, Javon broke. He told him everything. How Keisha would call him up late. How her tone changed once the door shut. How small favors turned into promises that felt real. Tremaine listened. He didn't interrupt. He just nodded once, slowly. Then he asked one question. Had Darius ever mentioned her name? Javon had never heard Darius speak of her. But now, he couldn't unsee what he saw. And once that suspicion took hold, it grew fast. 2 days later, Javon requested a copy of the camera logs. Officially, he had no access. Unofficially, Tremaine had connections. What came back was a grainy black and white clip, timestamped 3 nights in a row. Darius. Office door. After lights out. The truth began to take shape. Not a feeling anymore. Not a guess. Something deeper. Something dangerous. Tremaine didn't flinch. He'd seen setups before. Power plays. But this felt different. He pressed Javon to get tested. For everything. Just in case. Darius, approached alone, agreed. He had noticed symptoms too. Headaches, exhaustion, unexplained weight loss. But he told himself it was the food. The stress. When the results came back, both folders read the same. Positive. There were no words that followed. Javon sat for hours. Tremaine stayed nearby, but didn't say much. Darius didn't even return to his cell. He stayed in the chapel corner until lights out. The pieces were now too precise. Too sharp to ignore. 2 men. 1 woman. Both infected. Both kept close. Both misled. And the one thing they never thought they shared was now the one thing that bound them to the same fate. Javon's hands trembled when he asked the next question out loud. Was it revenge? Was it punishment? Or was it something worse, planned, timed, and carried out with full awareness? Tremaine didn't answer. He only told Javon to keep quiet. Not to show it. Not yet. The cell lights dimmed. Footsteps passed outside. And in the quiet that followed, a decision began to take shape. This wasn't a betrayal. This was a war. Only one side knew it had already started. They met in the laundry room, out of sight, away from curious ears. Javon didn't wait for small talk. He stepped forward and asked Darius the question directly. How long had it been going on with Keisha? Darius didn't deny it. He squared his shoulders and said her name like a man still trying to believe he hadn't been fooled. The conversation turned quickly. Accusations, raised voices, the kind of words that don't get taken back. Each man thought he was the only one. Each believed her when she said the others meant nothing. It should have ended there. Another fight. Another broken truce between inmates. But Tremaine stepped in before it reached fists. He told them both to sit down. He told them if they wanted to stay alive, they'd better start listening. Tremaine had been watching. Not just for days, but for years. Keisha didn't just pick favorites. She followed a pattern. Flattery, privileges, control. And when things got too close, transfer requests, sudden lockdowns, unexplained medical removals. He brought up names neither Javon nor Darius recognized. Inmates who once had extra privileges, then vanished. One to Huntsville, one to Polunsky. One listed dead from illness 3 weeks after reassignment. Javon remembered one of them, a guy from his first year inside. Always quiet, always kept clean. Got pulled for a special work detail with Keisha's office. Then gone. No warning. No explanation. Darius added his own memory. A man who'd been close to Keisha. Too close. Bragged about it once in the yard. A week later, that man was found unconscious in the shower with no visible injuries. Official cause, dehydration. They compared timelines. Every case matched a shift in Keisha's access. New routines. Sudden appointments. The patterns weren't hidden. They were in plain sight. It became clear that what happened to them wasn't an accident. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It was part of something practiced. Refined. Repeated. The 2 men, once ready to kill each other, now sat in the same silence. They weren't rivals. They were evidence. Tremaine leaned forward. He told them both there wouldn't be another chance to get ahead of it. If they waited too long, they'd end up like the others, removed, silenced, explained away with the kind of excuses no one ever questions behind bars. And that's when the alliance began. Not with a handshake. Not with promises. Just a single agreement They would stop playing her game. They would make their own. Keisha never waited for trouble to reach her door. She studied behavior like a second language. Cameras didn't just catch movement, they caught patterns. Inmates leaning in too close. Conversations that stopped when she passed. Changes in posture. In eye contact. In silence. She noticed a shift. Darius and Javon had stopped avoiding each other. They no longer reacted when her name was mentioned. They walked slower past her office, eyes steady. That kind of unity didn't form overnight. Not between men who once hated each other. She pulled the footage. She watched the laundry room scene twice. She listened to the shift reports. She flagged Tremaine's presence in multiple locations. The pieces fit. Too many visits, too many coincidences. She understood what was happening. They knew. And if they knew, they could talk. And if they talked, someone outside might listen. She had worked too long to build this world. She wasn't about to let it slip. She started with the yard. One phone call. A favor called in. 2 lieutenants in rival pods had unfinished business. She let it spread. Rumors about stolen commissary. Threats whispered through slot doors. She stirred the pot carefully, letting the tension climb without ever stepping too close. Then she flagged Darius for transfer. Not to another unit, but to a work detail known for being unpredictable. One that didn't come with backup. She arranged the shift schedule so that Darius would be stationed near an inmate with a history of sudden outbursts. She made sure the guards posted that day were newer, slower, easier to redirect. She leaked just enough information to suggest that Darius had been cooperating with staff, that he'd said too much, that he was no longer one of them. Inside prison walls, that kind of rumor spreads like smoke. She didn't act rashly. She didn't issue orders. She simply opened doors, then stepped back. And while the pieces moved, she turned her attention to Javon, watched him closer, waited to see how he would react once his only ally was removed. But Keisha underestimated something. She assumed fear would isolate. She assumed pain would quiet them. What she didn't expect was that they had already prepared for it, and they weren't planning to wait. Darius didn't ask permission. He walked straight into her office after lights out, knowing the cameras in the hallway were already compromised. Thanks to Tremaine. Keisha didn't look surprised. She closed the file on her desk slowly, like she'd been expecting him. Darius didn't waste time. He told her he knew everything. About the tests, the records, the disappearances. Keisha didn't deny it. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she stood, looked him in the eye, and said 5 words he would never forget. You criminals deserve what you get. She called it balance. Said the system was broken long before she stepped in. Said the courts were soft. The sentences too short. She claimed she was just correcting outcomes the justice system couldn't finish. Darius kept his voice steady. Told her he had proof. Told her the files weren't locked anymore. Told her there were people who would listen. She smiled at that. Said people don't care what happens in places like Eastham. Not really. He said she could still do one thing right. He gave her a choice, confess or be exposed. Publicly. He made it clear there would be no deal. No silence. No mercy. Keisha paused. She sat back down and pretended to think. Then she agreed. Quietly. She said she needed time. Said she wanted to write it in her own words. Something that could be submitted to the board. Darius nodded. He gave her 2 days. He walked out of that office thinking he'd just shifted the power. But by the time he returned to his cell, she had already made the first call. Within the hour, she reassigned the officers for the work detail. She logged a maintenance issue in the surveillance blind spot outside the machine room. She altered the incident report from last week, making it look like Darius had threatened another inmate. Then she erased the digital copy of their conversation. She knew what was coming, and she planned to make sure that by the time anyone started asking questions, Darius wouldn't be around to answer them. Not in person, not on paper, and certainly not alive. The workshop incident was no accident. Darius was reassigned to machine maintenance, alone, unarmed, and without the usual oversight. The detail supervisor was swapped out last minute. The guard posted at the back door never showed, and the one camera with a clear angle had gone dark just an hour earlier. Two inmates with known ties to a rival gang were let in with tools that didn't match their station. By the time anyone responded, Darius was on the floor, bleeding. The report read altercation during equipment malfunction, but Javon had seen it. He wasn't supposed to be there, but a last-minute change in laundry drop routed him past the workshop. He saw the hallway door slightly open, caught the movement inside, and paused just long enough to understand what he was watching. He didn't call out, didn't move. He just watched as two men walked away, and Darius didn't. When the news came down that Darius was stable but unconscious, Javon went to Tremaine. They both knew what it meant. Keisha had escalated. Javon changed that day. Something in him settled. He stopped asking why. He started asking how. Tremaine had access. Old connections. Guards who owed favors. Inmates who had nothing left to lose. They began collecting pieces. Files. Schedules. Logs. One guard confirmed Keisha's private visits to the medical wing. Another revealed she had keys that weren't registered on the main grid. They traced disappearances. Inmates transferred quietly. Some released early, without full paperwork. A few had died unexpectedly. Accidents, overdoses, unexplained seizures. The pattern wasn't random. Javon took notes, memorized her shifts, watched her leave the admin wing early some mornings, stop in the infirmary, pause by the chapel hallway, where cameras never worked. He began slipping into those gaps, timing his routines to cross hers. Keisha didn't notice at first, but Javon had started marking every door she walked through and everyone she locked behind her. He wasn't rushing. He was studying. She thought Darius had been silenced. She hadn't realized that the next one wasn't planning to speak. He was planning to act. The call came just after midnight. Darius was dead. They said he'd hanged himself with a torn bedsheet. The angle of the body was wrong. The ligature marks didn't match. The camera in his block had been off for 3 hours. The guards on rotation that night had changed shifts early. Official cause, suicide. Javon didn't buy it. Not because he thought Darius was invincible, but because Darius had a plan. He had leverage. He had evidence. He was ready to act. The paperwork was clean. Too clean. Statements were filed before morning. No autopsy was ordered. Just a quick note from the warden's office approving the removal of the body. Javon stopped sleeping. He didn't trust the silence anymore. Keisha had moved faster than he expected. She'd taken out a man who was once in the military, who knew protocol, who knew how to survive. She had help, and she had reach. Javon understood now. There would be no negotiation. No more gathering of pieces. No more waiting. It was him or her. He told Tremaine the plan. Not everything, just enough. Tremaine didn't argue. He didn't ask why. He just asked when. Tremaine pulled strings. Cleared Javon from roll call during final count. Arranged for a staged fight in the mess hall to draw security. Bribed a guard to unlock the corridor behind admin. One of the few that didn't have a live feed. The weapon was handmade. Sharp, small, concealable. Javon kept it hidden behind a loose tile in the shower. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was survival. Javon wasn't a killer by nature, but the system had already written him off, labeled him violent, tagged him for failure. Now he had nothing left to lose. Keisha thought she was ahead, that with Darius gone, Javon would fold. She didn't see that by killing one, she had given the other permission. This time, Javon wouldn't wait to be eliminated. He would strike first. Javon moved when the lights flickered twice, just as Tremaine said they would. The corridor behind the admin wing was unlocked, just long enough for him to slip through. No guards. No eyes. Just the sound of his breath and the weight of the blade in his hand. In the control room, Keisha saw the first sign. A live feed in Block D went dark, followed by alarms in the mess hall. 2 inmates throwing chairs, a third bleeding from a staged head wound. The guards rushed in. All of them. Just as planned. Keisha grabbed her keys, her sidearm, and sealed the door behind her. She knew. Javon was inside. She tried the radio. Static. Tremaine had jammed channel. She moved fast, sticking to the staff corridors, narrow, hidden, and mostly unknown to inmates. But Javon wasn't guessing. He had studied the floor plans, memorized the schedule, tracked her every routine for weeks. He wasn't chasing. He was hunting. Keisha reached the stairwell. Ground floor to security mezzanine. Just 3 flights. She paused only once. Hand on the railing, listening. Nothing. Then she moved. Javon followed the scent of bleach and old metal. Every hallway a memory. Every corner a warning. He passed the door, where she first kissed him. Walked past the infirmary, where she used to slip him sedatives, to keep him quiet. He didn't flinch. Keisha entered the surveillance office, locking it behind her. She tapped the console. No feeds. All blacked out. She tried to call Central. No response. She was alone. She turned. Javon was standing behind her. For 1 second, neither moved. Keisha reached for her weapon. Javon lunged. The office exploded into chaos. Keisha fought like someone who'd survived worse. But Javon had waited too long, lost too much. He wasn't there for a confession. Only one of them would leave that room alive. Keisha stumbled back into her office, bleeding from a cut above her brow. She slammed the door behind her, locking it, breathing hard. Her hand trembled as she reached for the drawer beneath her desk. Seconds later, Javon kicked the door open. She didn't scream. She didn't run. Instead, she stood tall, smeared with blood, defiant, lips parted as if nothing between them had ever gone wrong. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice low, controlled. "We were good together. You remember that." Javon said nothing. She stepped forward slowly, unbuttoning her blouse, as if peeling away guilt. "We can fix this. No one has to know. You loved me once." Javon pulled a small recorder from his pocket and placed it on the desk. A single click. Keisha froze. Her voice filled the room. Calm, cold, remorseless. "I knew exactly what I was doing. They trusted me. That's why it worked." The words played back like a confession written in stone. Keisha's eyes shifted. The drawer. Javon didn't blink. She lunged. The letter opener grazed a shoulder. He caught her arm, slammed her into the desk. She fought like a cornered animal, scratching, biting, spitting rage. She clawed at his face, landed a knee in his stomach, grabbed the opener again. Javon knocked it free. She reached for her belt, trying to use it as a weapon. He got there first. They crashed to the floor, her body twisting beneath his weight. She kicked, choked, begged. He didn't stop. The belt tightened around her throat. Her eyes widened, mouth gasping without sound. Javon leaned in close. "This is for Darius," he whispered, voice shaking. "And for what you did to us." She stopped moving. Javon let the belt fall from his hands. It was a correctional officer who first found the body. Her office door ajar, the belt still looped loosely in her hand. The blood, the bruises, the expression frozen in a final, failed act of control. The investigation moved quickly. Internal affairs arrived before sunrise. Within hours, Javon was isolated. By noon, every file, every drawer in Keisha Delacroix's office had been opened. In a hidden panel beneath the desk, investigators found a small box, cassette tapes, marked by dates, each with intimate audio recordings between Keisha and multiple inmates, names that stretched back nearly 8 years. Some of them were deceased. Others had been quietly transferred out of state. One had taken his life under questionable circumstances. Javon's recorder, left on her desk, contained the final nail. Her own voice admitting deliberate infection, manipulation, control. Javon didn't deny killing her. When asked why, he gave them a name. Darius. The murder charge stuck. So did 2 additional counts for contraband and assault. Javon's sentence, already severe, became permanent. He was moved to permanent solitary confinement. 23 hours in the box. 1 hour to pace in a fenced yard alone. But the story didn't stay buried inside Eastham Unit. Within days, news networks picked it up. Leaked tapes, archived medical records, an exposed pattern of abuse that spanned 2 wardens and 4 state administrators. Keisha's name made headlines. So did the phrase, weaponizing power from behind bars. Inmates from other units came forward. A former nurse testified before a state commission. Investigations opened in 3 other prisons. In the final scene, Javon sits on the cold floor of his cell, knees drawn to his chest, a pencil in one hand, a yellowed envelope in the other. He writes slowly, carefully. The words meant for Darius's family. A story they were never meant to know. The camera lingers on his face, tired but unflinching. And then the voiceover. Some justice can only be served in blood. And so, the walls of Eastham Unit stood silent once more, bearing witness to secrets that nearly remained buried, and to a reckoning few saw coming. Javon's name may never be cleared, but his actions lit a match in a system built on silence. For some, that was enough. For others, it was just the beginning. If you found this story gripping, thought-provoking, or worth sharing, make sure to like, share, and drop a comment below. We want to hear what you think. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more powerful, suspense-filled stories, just like this one. There's more waiting, real voices, untold truths, and stories that will keep you questioning what's really happening behind closed doors. Thanks for watching.